let's talk about property since we're at a property seminar. What's happening in the Australian property market? It's all going to come down. Do you know what I love reading? One of the things that I read every day is the Property Observer newsletter, where you've got all the different people commenting about property. And it's funny how you get a positive article saying the market's going well, consumer index is up, listings are up, no comments. The moment someone comes up, the market's about to, yeah, all the comments, yeah, you bastards. There's like 500 people saying, yeah, it's going to crash, and you know, you'd be suffering, and it's incredible. The reality is there's been studies showing the residential property over the last 24 years has literally outperformed every other asset class. Over 20 years, ASX and listed property has just outperformed residential property, but then depending on which period of time I guess you measure. But it's right up there. You know, it's returning at between 10 and 12%, depending on what you read. What we're experiencing now, if you look at September 2011, Melbourne and Sydney clearance rates were at 50%. So half of the properties are getting passed in, half are getting sold. Number of auctions, 614. So that's a good volume of auctions. And then we've got February 2012, it went up a little bit. And now last week, October, we had 60%, but look at the number of auctions, very low. We've got the spring auction weekend now, which is 1,200 auctions, because next weekend is Cup Days and no one wants to sell anything. Everyone's going to be at barbecues drinking beer. Melbourne and Sydney are actually the easiest markets to measure in terms of auctions because we sell majority of our properties at auction. Can anyone tell me why we sell properties at auction in Melbourne and Sydney? What's the reason? Because auctions are not a good vehicle to sell your property. In fact, you will never get the highest price at an auction. You can only get your second highest price. Does everyone know that? I'll give you an example. When you have a property on the market, let's say, for example, there's a house, whatever the vendor's reserve is, let's say it's $500,000 property, the vendor's willing to sell it at $550,000. Imagine there was a person, a developer, who's willing to pay $750,000 for that property because he owns the block next door. So obviously his incentive for buying that property is much higher. But majority of the people that go to auctions are owner-occupiers. So let's say we're bidding in $2,000, $5,000 increments, okay? And what's your name, sir? Mark. Mark, your maximum that you're going to bid at this auction, where you cannot bid anymore, is $550,000. Okay, and I'm the developer who wants the block because I own the one next door, and I'm going to put 12 townhouses on it. Okay, so let's do the bidding now. 535.
540.
545.
550.
555. Any bids? Going once, going twice, sold. Who bought the property? Me. What was my highest bid? 555. What was I willing to go to? 750. Now, we can actually prove this. And what happened was, I was teaching this at an event and the real estate agent said to me, well, that's not actually true because you can't prove it. And I said, I can prove it. And I can prove it because in Geelong, there was a church that wanted to acquire the site next to it and use it as a car park. Now, when the church turns up at an auction, they don't just randomly turn up because it's not their money. So what do? They have a meeting and they've got to find out, get a pre-approval on how much money they can spend. Now, the money they're willing to spend to extend the car park next door was over $1 million to acquire this particular parcel of land. And the parcel of land got sold at $750,000, $250,000 below what the church was willing to spend. And that's proof because it's documented. So auctions will never give you the highest price. They can only give you the second highest price on what someone is prepared to pay. Private tender sales and things like that, expressions of interest, always get you the highest price. Why do people in Melbourne and Sydney sell at auction? Because agents here are more aggressive than in any other major capital city, and we want commissions in 6 weeks, guaranteed. So let me show you exactly what happens in the real estate world. Agents hate when I show this. Don't show them that. Any agents in the room? This is how the agents work. High ball, low ball, crunch. Real estate agents are the most overpaid, unskilled people I've ever come across in my whole life. Seriously, they're just pot plants sitting there at this open for inspection. Not all of them, but majority of them. Because it just takes 2 weeks to become an agent, you know, you just sit there bored out of your brain half the time listening to all this legislation stuff. So let's say you're selling a house in Moorabbin and Moorabbin median price is 600. So people list their property, they're emotional. We love our Moorabbin house. Moorabbin's such a good, it's got DFO, it's got Southland, you know. So you ring up 3 agents. You ring up, you know, Ray White, Hocking Stewart. The silly thing is, the honest agents never get the listing because they know it's 600. So you get one guy who'll tell you, look, the market's moving, I can get you 580, possibly 590, but even better on the day. Then you get some dodgy agent, usually ones that's starting up their own practice. Oh, look, Moorabbin's amazing. You know, people from Brighton selling up to living to Moorabbin. And I love it when they say this, should the right buyer come along, what the hell does that mean? We can get you possibly 620. I've even seen up to 650. Then you get another honest agent, give you 590. Guess which one they list with? That Roger, he was a real getter, you know. All agents want is exclusive listing for 90 days. Sign and it's theirs. If you sell it or if it sells, they get guaranteed commission. Then the conditioning begins. Now, agents normally like to do 4 open for inspections. Open for inspections are never designed to sell the property that they're selling. Open for inspections are always designed to generate leads for future sales. Let me give you an example. What's your name? Stephanie?
Edward.
And Edward. Hi, I'm the agent. You're coming through the Moorabbin's a great area. Hello, how are you going? Can I grab your details? Just your, yeah? And driver's license, great. Okay, guys, if you don't like this property here, I've got another one listing around the corner. What the hell am I doing now? I'm selling them my other listing. So what are you looking for and how much are you looking? Do you like the living room? No? I'll tell you what, here's my card. I've got a couple of others around the corner and we can go and check those out. Agents open for inspections are a lead generating activity at your expense to generate leads for them in the future. It is never to sell the existing property. And then at the end of each day, the agent rings you back, okay? So what's your name?
Mark.
Mark, and you're the owner, and they say, Mark, I can't believe what the market's telling me. I think your property's worth 630. However, I had a lovely young couple come through and they said, look, the living room's a bit small, the back needs a lot of renovation. They're looking at other properties at 580, 590. So I'm just letting you know, I think it's worth more. You know, the market is picking up, but I'm just giving you feedback in terms of, you know, I want to keep you in the loop, Mark. You know, I want to tell you what's happening in the market. Automatically, they're conditioning his psychology that he's going to get a lower price. But you know what? When he goes to auction, anything can happen, Mark. We're going to create a bit of a frenzy, you know, to get them up. Every week when there's an open, the conditioning begins. Mark, again, I can't believe what the market's telling me. You know, once again, the living area is a bit small. There's a couple of other properties that are superior in the market, but I'll tell you what, we'll do our best. I'll just keeping you informed, just letting you know what's happening, you know. And then the auction day comes. And the auction day is purely there to virtually guarantee that they get the 2.5% commission. Because all they want to do is get the property on the market and sell. And they will tell you, you know what, Mark, it's better to put the property on the market now because then create momentum because people know you're serious, you know. And then they sell the property. If they sell below what they quoted, now you might have your reserve. That's why they get the reserve. What's the, you know, 595. If they sell it at 630 because 2 couples were desperate to get that property, guess what the agents say? Well, it's our skills. You know, we've been around for 20 years. We know the market. Like, you know, our skills sold your property. We know what we're doing. If they sell under, gets passed in, guess what? Well, that's the market, isn't it? That's the market. Do you know what I mean? It's like they've got nothing to do with the sale. Nothing. Like, how can they influence what you guys will bid? You've been to your broker, you know what you're pre-approved, you're emotionally involved in the property. High ball, 630, low ball, the market's bad. I think you should put on the market at 590, create a frenzy, maybe you'll breach the 600 mark. If you've been to these 2 agents, they'll told you exactly what it's worth. That's what happens in real estate. Agents go, don't tell them that, you know. They hate it when I tell them. See, I can bag everyone because I'm wearing all these different hats.
So if you were to sell, which one would you go for?
I would go private, yeah. And I'll get an agent and just get expressions of interest, you know, private bids. I would never sell anything at an auction unless the market, I would sell at an auction if the clearance rates were 90% plus. And I would set such a stupid reserve that, only like there were 2 bidders left.
Can't you do dual exclusive agencies as well, so they've got to compete against each other?
You can, but they won't give you the same time because they will have to... Look, they don't like doing that, and most of them will just shaft you to the back of the queue and they'll focus on the ones that they definitely have a guaranteed commission. Because they don't know what the other guy's doing. It's like selling a fridge and 2 people selling the same thing. You're not going to work as hard for that as you are if you've got exclusive fridge selling abilities, Consumer sentiment index is the way we gauge the market. So basically the way that people feel and perceive the reality becomes the reality. And even though in Australia we've got a very strong economy, we actually have a recessionary type psychology right now. Technically we shouldn't be there, but people are extremely negative out there in the marketplace. They're conservative. Our spending habits are as high as they were in the 80s. People are paying off their mortgages, creating buffers, not spending big, retail's down, So we're actually in a recessionary psychology, but we're technically not in a recession. And you can see there's a very strong correlation between the consumer sentiment index, which is how people feel and perceive reality, based on the volume of sales. There's a very strong correlation. So if people feel they're uncertain about their job, about the economy, what are they going to do? They're not going to splash out and buy properties and renovate. They're going to hold back and, and see what will happen. And vice versa. If they feel bullish and things are going well and, you're getting promoted at work, more money's coming in, you're picking up more contracts, you're going to go and overextend on your property. In terms of market activity, the 2 months of January and December are virtually a write-off because no one wants to sign contracts at Christmas or January, So agents kind of take 2 months off. We only work 10 months a year, really. But you can see there, the market still is going up. This is September 2008. And you can see there, the media goes, when it goes from there to there, it's crashing. All right, it's recovering. It's recovering. So they always go on these, but really the market's just been going it's just going through its motions of the property cycle. There's no big deal about what's happening. Where are we in the property cycle? The property cycle has 4 distinctive parts to it. How many people don't know where we are in the property cycle? No idea, what is he talking about? No one? How many people know where we are in the property cycle? So no one's put their hands up for both. Okay, so how many people know where we are in the property cycle?
Where?
I'm asking the question. How many people don't know where we are? We're at the bottom. We won't know exactly where we are at 6 or 6:30, but we're probably about there somewhere, going up because we're seeing an increase in consumer sentiment moving, clearance rates, listings are up. And what we also know is there's different events trigger parts of the property cycle. So we have property sales slowing down, construction of new dwellings slowing down, prices dropping, bottom of the market. You don't know the bottom of the market because the data is 6 months old. So you have to look back 6 months. You're always looking back at the property market saying, that's where we were back then. So we won't know where we are today until about March next year, accurately, when all the data is compiled from all the agencies, they put in all the sales, and we can work out some meaningful statistics. Rental returns increasing, which is where we are now. There's articles now, hundreds of articles about rental increases. If you're reading my newsletters and my blogs, there's hundreds of articles about rental increases in Melbourne right now. Not enough property to meet demand. Interest rates reducing, which is happening now at the same time. More property selling fast, more constructions of new dwellings. Peak of the market, it's too late, it's frantic. This is like when you have on Current Affairs, single mother made 60 grand in 2 days, And Jenny and Carl bought this property in Albert Park for $750 and now it's worth $900. Those stories? It's all over, Lowering of rental returns, I'll talk about why, because there's an inverse relationship between capital growth and rental yields. Too many properties on the market, interest rates increasing, slowing down, and just goes again. The last time we were here was 2004. It's definitely time now, 10 years later, to hit that again in the next 2 years. So we're probably, my gut feeling is around 6:30, right about there. Perfect timing to go nuts with property right now. What happens with developers? Developers crack me up. This is developers here going into the market. I love developers. My best friends are developers. I'll tell you what the psychology is. Not all of them. The best ones are detached emotionally, but this is what happens in the property cycle. So we've got this peak and it just goes down and up, right? And the gap the peaks here, usually it's about 8 to 10 years between this place and that place. No one knows exactly, and during that period of time, the reality is the cycle kind of goes like that, right? It's never exactly linear. But what happens with developers, they crack me up. So what happens is the market goes down, it goes down, then we're here about 6 o'clock, and suddenly it picks up again. Developers usually wake up around here. Shit, we can make massive margins. These townhouses are selling for 650, sites are selling for 100 per site. That means they're making 500 less cost, 30% margin. They start doing research here. They start accumulating the land, they settle here, and going to the next page. So they do research here, they buy the land here, they start construction here. They've got delays because it's at the boom of the market. Tradies, calling in sick, and then they sell the properties around here. They curse, they go bankrupt. They swear they'll never do property developing again. They lose everything. Then the property market recovers, and then they wake up around here. Shit, you can make some margin. Do you know what I mean? Like this is crazy prices, They ring up, Roger, are you still building? Come on, yeah, we'll be millions. Then they come out, they acquire the land here, they start construction, they have a slowdown, they settle here to lose money, they curse, and, oh yeah, never doing development again. And that's exactly what happens. The good ones just manufacture a product every single year and just sell it, regardless. Sometimes they make 30%, sometimes they make 10%, sometimes they break even, But the ones that do this, because suddenly at the boom, everyone's a developer. Have you noticed? Like everyone's developing, The predictions are currently that Melbourne, Victoria is going to go sideways till March 2013, and then eventually you're going to see significant increases around June and March next year of movement. We got 2 townhouses in Oakley, to give you an example. In Oakley South, the old motel sign, where I've got $50,000 discount below valuation from the actual developer, because he's got 2 townhouses left. He just wants to sell them. They've been with the agent now, I think listed for a couple of months, and he just wants to get out of the project because he can't close the books on that until he sells everything. And they're not probably the best located properties, but they're 50 grand below what anything else sold. So discounts like that don't occur anywhere apart from 6 o'clock on the property clock, because at the peak they'll just sell regardless. What are investors doing right now? Going in hard and negotiating, but also being very discerning about what they pick and buy. And really picking your targets really well, which I'll show you in terms of what I'm buying and where I'm going. What are academics predicting? The market's going to crash. So, there's one academic that predicted the market's going to crash back in 2009, 2010. There's a whole bunch of them, and I've actually written an article in the Property Inc. magazine called The Property Bubble Myth last year. So I won't go through this with you, but academics have been predicting the market's going to crash since 1960. And these are all the different reasons why the market was supposedly going to crash. Now, this thing about me is that I keep all these documents. I collect all the articles. And I'm 36. I've got hundreds of articles per academic that they write and publish. I save them all in folders. All the predictions, the crashes, and I communicate with them. Hey, hello, hello. What happened? What happened? That's how I get my kicks. Can you imagine? Is that sad? Still here. It's 2008. What is it? It's 2012. Just here in Brighton, and looking at this property, 2.5. Should be around, what, 250 grand now? 300? Sure it's still coming? Hello? In the late 60s, so these are the different reasons why. There was a lot of articles written about how the market's going to crash and it's unsustainable. In the mid-60s, we had emerged from a major credit squeeze, finance dried up, property market's going to crash. In the late 60s, we had nickel share boom, and all the commodity prices were booming because the baby boomers were buying their first property. There's 1 billion baby boomers that were buying properties in the 60s and 70s. And I'll show you what happened to capital growth. So all the commodity prices went nuts. And everything, property was actually proclaimed an inferior investment. In the 70s, we had a recession. Every time there's a recession or even the notion of having 3 consecutive quarters of negative growth, what happens? It's all going to crash. It's imminent crash is coming. In the 70s, we had rising inflation and the OPEC oil crisis of the 1970s. Bang, market's going to crash in Australia. In 83, there was a recession with high interest rates, high inflation. In the 80s, commentators were saying, these financial commentators were saying that property prices were too high. They cannot go up, they're unsustainable. In 85, we had the introduction of capital gain tax. This would be the end of property investing as we knew it. Because now, you pay capital gain tax on any money you make from property. Why wouldn't you buy shares? In 87, there was a fear of 1930 types of depression. We had the 87 stock market crash. In 89, we had rising interest rates and inflation. We had the famous recession we had to have. People in 89 and 90, when interest rates were 18%, were saying that our children will never be able to enter the property market. Median price in Melbourne, $180,000. Who could afford that? You know, who could afford? I'm going to write a book about all these different reasons, how they got it wrong. 91, unemployment 11.3. Property would never rise in value again. 93, 94, Australian foreign debt and current account deficit deterred many people from investing. We had the Asian currency crisis of the 90s. In Japan, people were losing jobs for the first time that they were guaranteed for life. I was at Monash learning about Kaizen, continuous never-ending improvement based on Japanese principles. And what happened? The whole thing went out the window. Everyone's got sacked at the end. That's your total quality management thing. Do you know TQM? What happened to TQM? I've got books in my garage on TQM. You know, Deming. What happened, Edward Deming? It all went out the window. In the 90s, we had high inflation, you know. We had September 11. Who remembers that? September 11. That was more than 10 years ago, can you imagine? Property market was supposed to be going to crash because all the insurance houses lost money. I remember in Melbourne, people were saying 10 years ago, I mean, that's it. The market's crashing. It's all over. Subprime, GFC, the market's crashing. Rising unemployment, recession. Now you know what it is? All right. It didn't crash. But you know what? It's not sustainable, goddammit. It can't continue. It's unsustainable. Really? Compared to what? Or what happened in the US happened in the UK. You can make excuses, you can make money, but you cannot do both at the same time. So let's have a look at Melbourne. GFC, I was there. I've got hundreds of articles that I'm never deleting. And what happened between the GFC and Melbourne? I'll tell you what happened. Absolutely nothing happened. In fact, we climbed at a peak to 601,000 in December 2010. The market was supposed to crash here during the GFC. I've got articles by 3 leading economists, 2 from New York, saying that definitely we're going to crash. There's no question about it, just a matter of when. 3 years later. In fact, the same time, we had Baldwin go up 24.2%. This is September 11 median quarter. We had Deer Park go up 11.1, Brighton East 10.1. The same time these people were writing articles predicting a crash, as an agent I was getting data about our suburbs going up. Isn't that crazy? See, I'm keeping all this information. Can you imagine what I'll have 10 years from now on these people? Still there? Hello? I'm going to hunt them down when they're in retirement villages, you know? They'll be trying. It's that bloody Conrad again with his articles. Christopher Joel, who's a big advocate of the property market, is an economist who writes for the Property Observer magazine. He actually came out with a study and this is from the ANZ research report. And look at this, Australian Bureau of Statistics, Reserve Bank of Australia and RP data. He proved that most property increases since 86, 90% of the price increases can be attributed to income increases and inflation and consumer demand. So there was no speculation, there was no kind of inflated property prices, because a lot of people are saying that it's actually inflated by greed or people, investors are buying up properties and inflating the market somehow. So what's my prediction for the next 10 years? It's going to be pretty much the same as the last 10 years. There's been really nothing new in property, honestly. I wish there was, but there really isn't. Is there a property bubble? Let's have a look at some of these articles. These are actual median article quotes plotted against the Sydney median house prices from the Sydney Herald Sun. 93, Sydney wins the Olympics. Property prices are unlikely to rise. 99, interest rate rise concern. Experts predict 20% drop in property prices. February 2002, has the property bubble burst? Possibly wrong time to invest, good time to sell. September 2002, property bubble about to burst. January 2003, is there a bubble? September 2003, property bubble will damage the economy. Do you see how this line goes like that? That's 112 years of the property market in Sydney. That peak there is this part here. Do you know how many times people predicted the market was going to crash right there? Hundreds of articles. And they had beautiful charts. Random bell-shaped curves. Who's done bell-shaped curves? Random regression analysis. Standard deviation curves. It was all there. Warren Buffett says, beware of geeks bearing formulas. It's one of my favourite quotes. The problem with all this analysis is that they are flawed from the onset because they're assuming they're dealing with an investment market. It's not an investment market. The property market is owner-occupied driven. It is not driven by fear or greed or speculation. It is driven by necessity to live somewhere. That's the reality. My mum lives in Bentley, and I said to my mum, you know, she bought a house for $400,000. It's worth now, we had it valued for $950,000. I said, Mum, if you made $550,000, would you sell your house? She said, no. I said, why not? Well, because I like living here. It's close to the beach, close to Centre Road. All my friends live here. Okay. What if your property went from 400 to 200 overnight? Would you sell your house? No. Why not? Because I like it here. It's close to Centre Road, it's close to the beach. My friends live here. You see, her decision-making model has nothing to do with the value of the property. She lives there because she likes living in Bentley. And that's the majority of people living in suburbs. They're not actually, people, if the market drops by 10%, people just don't go, oh, that's it, we're getting out, and just leave the house and take all your belongings, right? Where would they go? The money's trapped in the market. It's not going anywhere. So you can see there, who would agree this is an upward trending line? Yeah? This is from 1901 to 2006, and now we know what happened. It just went flat. Median price in Melbourne in 1966, $13,000. In 1976, the year I was born, $37,000. In 86, 83. It's overpriced apparently in 89. Who could afford to buy into that market? 96, 144,000. 2008, 432,000. Can you imagine? And people always think it's crashing. The biggest thing to understand about this market is Melbourne has never been cheap as a market. Melbourne has always been very expensive as a suburb relative to average incomes. We were never cheap. So, you know, like kids go, man, I would have bought half of South Yarra, you know, for 13,000. Well, not if you're on like $600 a year, you wouldn't, because that's a lot of money, you know. If you look at capital growth, in 1962, look at the times that the market did go backwards, 62 and 63, and look what happened in 1964. It went up by 8.6. In 1967, 3.1. In 68, 11.7. Look what happened when baby boomers, it's all your fault, everything, entered the market in 72. So about 30, and they're buying their first property. That's why we had the commodities boom all around the world, because they were buying houses, so we needed, you know, timber and all the commodities. 19, 36, 30. Then we had the 80s, 0.4, and then 81, 24%. There was a slow period here. We had a lot of legislation changes. We had, you know, kind of a recessionary environment. But if you buy and hold and never sell, how can you lose money on property, especially if you target the right suburbs? Warren Buffett's favourite quote, not favourite quote, one of my favourite quotes from Warren Buffett is, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. So do the exact opposite of what the market's doing and you win. That's what I teach with counter-cyclical investing. When people are selling, revalue your properties and lock in your lines of credit. When people are buying properties, sorry, I just stuffed that up. It's the opposite. You know what I mean. So at the moment, buying properties when people are panicking and clearing rates are low, and at the peak of the market, you don't buy anything. You basically just spend all your time getting comparable sales and letting people inflate property prices. So one of the questions that I get asked is, what will money do to me, if I make all this money? And money is really a magnifier for who you are. Money won't change you as a person, it will just make you more so. So if you're a good person now, if you're doing a lot of charity work and giving back, you're going to be giving back even more and doing more charity work. If you're a bastard, guess what? You're going to become an even bigger bastard with money. One of my favourite quotes was from Arnold Schwarzenegger when he finally made it in Hollywood and he made a lot of money. In his career, he was asked by a journalist, Arnold, now that you've made millions of dollars, would you say that money can buy you happiness? And Arnold said, money doesn't make you happy. I have 50 million now, but I was just as happy when I had 48 million. I love that. That's classic. So that's proof that money will not make you happy, because they're just as happy with 48. So we've got a massive shortage of properties on the market, and we used to produce a surplus, by the way. Now we've got a shortage of properties. Rental yields also are going up aggressively, especially in the Bayside of Melbourne. Over the last 5 years, the major capital cities have gone up by 40.7% in terms of rental yields. And you're going to see in this part of the property cycle, rental yields going up quite aggressively. One of the things that's fueling all this growth is the population growth projections. Between 2007 and 2056, Melbourne 2007 had a population of 3.7 million, and then we've got 3.7 million projections between now and 2056. There's going to be 2.9 million people moving to Melbourne. Now, we've never had that in the history of Australia. Can you imagine what's going to happen? And all of them want to live in St Kilda. Can you imagine what will happen to Hawthorn, those areas? I mean, they're just going to go nuts. And when people think, if you look at the most expensive suburbs in Australia, about out of the top 30, I think 25 are in Sydney. I mean, there's properties in Sydney that are like 6, 7, 10, 15, 20 million dollars. Because all the properties on the Darling Harbour with water views automatically go to 5 million plus. We have actually very cheap suburbs in Melbourne. Our Brighton and Toorak nearly didn't make the cut in the top 25. So Melbourne has so much scope to grow and there's so much money coming in. And I would say Melbourne's a better planned city than compared to Sydney, and it's more livable and people are more friendly. So Victoria's got basically 3.3 million people moving to it. This is from RP data and the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Melbourne's got 2.99 million of those people living to Melbourne. So if you imagine how much pressure that's going to put on the rental market. And these people are not broke. There's a lot of cashed up migrants coming in with cash. Going straight into key areas. So we've got a massive housing shortage, 500,000 dwellings by the end of the decade, based on Housing Industry Association reports. So in Victoria, 104,200 in Victoria, which we can't keep up with, And the difference between what's happening in 85, when we came over here from Eastern Europe, is that the Russians that are coming over now and the Polish people, they're coming with $500,000 to $1 million in cash plus. I mean, they're going straight to Bentley, Brighton, East and buying in cash. No mortgages. The whole area is becoming Russian, because they got one. I said to mine, why the hell are they moving here? And why Polish people? Oh, because we've got this deli on Centre Road and I can get my Polish cheese there. So the whole community is structured around this magic cheese, apparently. You can only get one area of it's not even that good. They come over and they can't let go of the food because, we don't have good food in Australia. A rising cost of construction as well. So you can see that construction costs are on the commodities are becoming more expensive. Now they've actually stabilised, but still we've got China slowing down and the government's actually slowing down China because, double-digit growth is unsustainable. But the amount of money that it needs and the amount of commodities that China requires, we're competing with that, indirectly with the housing industry. Because to build a house, you need, commodities. In Victoria, so we've got a massive housing shortage. By 2016 in Victoria, 67,000 at the shortage at the medium build rate and 104,200 at the high rate. Melbourne property market. So the Melbourne property market doesn't really exist. It's very fragmented, it's very disjointed. We've got different parts of the market doing different things. The red dots here are the most expensive suburbs. The green are the cheapest suburbs by median price. There's a couple of things around Melbourne that is unique to Melbourne, and that is the way it was structured originally. If you look at Williamstown, Port Melbourne, all those areas used to be predominantly blue-collar areas. You know, if you look at Port Melbourne, that was basically shipping yards. You know, single-fronted Victorians were made for workers. The money was originally in Melbourne in the eastern suburbs. Kew, Canterbury, Camberwell had all the money. Toorak and Brighton used to be where they have their holiday houses. That's why if you look at Brighton, the construction of Brighton is very cheap. If you take away the last 20 years, all the properties constructed beforehand weren't built as well as the ones in Kew or Canterbury or Camberwell. So if you look at the way that was established, the best schools in Melbourne are where? In the eastern suburbs, around Balwyn and Kew and Canterbury and all those areas. And you can't replicate 100 years of history of a school, no matter what you do. The other thing is, in this part of Melbourne, you have the largest concentration of white-collar job centres or business parks. Do you guys know how many people work in the city in Melbourne as a percentage of the workforce? Can anyone shout out some statistics or some figures? No one? What do you reckon? 80%, 50%, 25%? It's actually less than 20% of people working in the city. 80% of people in Melbourne work in job hubs outside of the city. And that's one of the interesting things. The other driver in Melbourne is that the actual land is going up faster than house and land, and it's the cost of producing land blocks that is escalating. To give you an understanding of land costs, to create a brand new 450 square metre block of land in say 2007, in Victoria was around $35,000 plus GST. Now it's $65,000 plus GST. So just to produce the land from farmland is going up exponentially. If you look at the cost of blocks, in July 2001 in Melbourne, the average block of land was $71,000, and July 2011, it's $210,000. So majority of the capital growth in house and land estates can be attributed just for the cost of construction and land going up in value, without even capital growth. That's why house and land has growth independent of capital growth. If you just put in cost of land plus construction plus inflation, your property doubles every 10 years. So you don't actually need capital growth to make money out of property, which is amazing. On top of that, we obviously have capital growth because of demand. The other thing that's happening is land's getting smaller in size and more expensive. So if you look around Melbourne, majority of the areas, you're getting increases in block prices, but they're actually getting smaller and smaller, from 630 to 512, from 628 to 450. People are not interested anymore in having a big backyard for new properties. They just want a big house. Houses are getting bigger, you know, but the backyards are getting smaller. We just want a little courtyard. We don't want the 3rd acre block, so you've got to pay someone $100 to mow the lawns, because we just want low maintenance basically. So we've got houses versus townhouses versus apartments, and so people say, oh, I like apartments, I like townhouses, I like house and land. Really, what it is land, and then there's build, and you've got to break down property into two components. Land goes up, properties depreciate. So if you look at different properties and different valuations, if you look at house and land for 550, let's take a 550 price. On the house and land, it's usually a 50-50 split between the land and the actual build. On the townhouse, usually the build component is slightly higher than the actual land component, vice versa. It can be actually the other way around. I'll show you. It depends on the size of the property and where the land's located. On apartments, the land component is usually the cheapest, and the build is actually the most expensive in terms of breakdown. And I'll show you exact specific examples. So a lot of people actually, when they look at that, they think, well, shouldn't I be buying, something that has a big land component to it? Yes and no. And where it gets complex is that you want to secure debt in an asset that appreciates by 10% per year with the minimum outlay out of pocket. So let me give you an example. of rental yields as well. In this example here, if you look at St Kilda, for example, this is a property here for $450 a week, and the value of that property is $469. So it's an old Art Deco apartment on the massive block. The rental yield's 5%. In this particular example, the rental is $650 a week, the value is $1.3 million, the rental yield is 2.8% on this property. So what's a better rental yield? And which one is good, which one is bad? Is there such a thing? Because, you know, who would agree that a house in St Kilda is a pretty good investment on a large land component? So it comes down to, yes, this is a superior property for 1.3 million, but it comes down to the question of, can you afford to hold on to it? You know, for some of you, yes, for some of you, no. Some of you will get in financial trouble to buy this property. And there's an inverse relation between rental yields and the capital growth, because this goes up faster than any other property in the area, because that land can be redeveloped. An apartment block cannot be redeveloped. So I find apartments and townhouses have the best rental yield, and they are the cheapest to hold on to, generally speaking. It's because they're cheaper than townhouses, but the rental yields are comparable, and they're usually around the 5% mark. Townhouses have a good land component, but once again, the rental yield's slower. And houses in established areas have the lowest rental yield, around 2.5%, in South Yarra, Malvern, Brighton, all those areas. Because there's not many people that can afford to buy, you know, $2,000 per week. So this is the park here in 18 Martin Street, St Kilda. It's got very good common areas with scan cards that are only accessible to the actual locals that live in the actual apartment. So you can't get in, you can't walk into this courtyard off the street. It's via scan card only. 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom apartments. That's Martin Street there. We're going to park our bus here tomorrow. And you can see that this architectural design, they're actually bars, because people still have problems in St Kilda of breaking in. So even though it looks really cool, it's actually, this is all steel, so people can't break into your balcony. In terms of capital growth, I mean, and this is architecturally designed, this whole building. It is literally, every part is intricately designed. It's not a standard build. I've bought 2 properties here myself. So everything from the moment you walk in is just going to be amazing. And I've seen this builder, I've actually seen his last 6 projects. And I did inspections physically in 6 of his past projects. And he only does St Kilda. He doesn't do any other area. In terms of capital growth, St Kilda has had 53.9% capital growth over the last 5 years. 15.9% over the last 12 months, RP data. And that's on units. Is that impressive? It is the best area in Melbourne for rentals, full stop. It's predominantly young people, single young people who are professionals, who love the area, who work in the city. You can literally live in St Kilda without a car, which means you can jump on the tram, 6 stops, you're in Flinders Street. I mean, you don't need a car for that. You can walk everywhere, bring shopping back, you can go to the beach, you've got gyms, you've got everything. You know, it's literally like an amazing area to live in. Is it a good area to bring a family up? It's probably the worst area, you know? I mean, there's people walking around just out of their heads all day long, you know? That's the back of the property there. So with the balconies, that's the common area. You can only get through this area here with a scan card, so it's only for locals only, which is really cool, I think. Everything in the property is unique, right down to the fixtures and fittings, the tiles. It's all artistically designed. I've been through 6 of their past projects. I was blown away. I have never seen this amount of intricate design in the property at medium price in Melbourne. They just don't exist. Even Cameron Fisher, who now Cameron knows this developer for over 20 years. They actually did their valuation degree together, because both Cameron and this developer are certified valuers. So they actually did the valuation degree, and then this guy became a developer. So he's very knowledgeable, and it's an amazing fix for the properties. You can see that this part here is more so to protect the properties, and as you go down, these little bars act as a way of stopping people from, you know, crawling into your property. These are the past projects that the builder has done. This is a builder-developer team. So sometimes the builder and developer are 2 separate entities. The builder could be just a deal maker, and he subcontracts, the developer could be a deal maker and he subcontracts a builder. This is not the case. This company is the builder and the developer. They control the whole process. They don't outsource anything, they don't subcontract. They literally run the whole thing, which is why they're so good. So I physically have been to these projects here. in Fitzroy Street and Brobe Street behind McDonald's there in St Kilda. Amazing, amazing developments. And you'll get this brochure tomorrow. So you get this physically printed off, you can go through the whole thing. So that's the actual footprint of that's the ground floor of the project. There's a couple of apartments here that you can walk in straight off the street, and there's your balconies, and there's the car parks, and this has a car stacker system in the back, which means it's great for depreciation. So anything with elevators, moving parts, very good for depreciation. The bad thing about it is you always pay a little bit more in owner's corporation because you've got to cover maintenance and insurance. And I'll go through the owner's corporation with you in a second. This is the level 1 apartments. So you can see they're very good design. I'm going to go through them individually with you in a second and show you what's good and bad about different apartments. Level 2, level 3 and level 4 penthouses. If you look at individual apartments, let me talk about different configurations. So number one thing is never buy a project where every apartment has the same floor plan. I like to always buy apartments where every configuration is completely different. So you're not competing directly with any other apartment. This is a 1-bedroom apartment, 53 square meters internal, and a balcony which is 7 square meters. So that's an okay sized balcony. I wouldn't say it's fantastically big, but you can put a table there with 5 seats and a barbecue just. 1 bedroom, and then you've got your bathroom over here, and then you've got potentially a study bedroom over here. I would call it a study. But you could rent it, even though it's a 1 bedroom, you could actually rent this as a 2 bedroom. In St Kilda you can get away with it. So these are the 1 bedrooms. I'll show you a couple of really cool things in St Kilda on some of these properties. So this is a 2-bedroom property, very good sized balcony, good light coming into the property, bedroom with light, and you've got the single bathroom, another bedroom. The best properties that I usually look for are configurations of properties where you can actually separate them and have, especially with 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms. So for example, this is a 2-bedroom apartment. You can see that this property here has its own bathroom shower area, and it's got an internal balcony that looks on the inside of the property. But this bedroom here also has access to a balcony, but it also has a bathroom shower area. If you put a lock on this door here, you could literally contain this and this separately. So you could get more rental that way because you're separating them into 2 properties. Does that make sense? So always try to look for configuration of apartments where you can separate them into 2 separate rooms, self-contained with a bathroom. So they can have their own common area over here, but if you put a lock on this door and if you put a door here, which will cost you nothing, and you put a lock on it, this person is completely contained within here. That's got a lock on it anyway. They've got their own bathroom. You can put a lock on the balcony, and this person has their own little balcony and they've got their own bathroom, so this is self-contained as well. You get a premium for renting a property like this than a property that you can't modify like that. So that's something that you need to be aware of with floor plans. And some of them just don't have that option. For example, this one here has got a kitchen, it's got 1 bathroom. You can't do anything because this property doesn't have another bathroom. The bathroom is here, and then the bathroom is here, so you can't do anything with this one either. You're still going to get very good rentals, by the way, for these ones. We're just saying sometimes you can just add a twist to a property, if you can, and you can secure it. And you can see that they're all different shapes of properties, so that you're not competing with anyone, and they've got really good sized balconies as well. Even the 1-bedroom, that's a really great 1-bedroom apartment. In St Kilda, there's a massive demand for 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments because a lot of single young people that don't want to share it with anyone just want to be right in the middle of St Kilda, access to everything. So I purchased this one here, which is apartment 302 with the biggest balcony, and this one here as well. So that's a huge balcony. That is very much in demand in St Kilda. St Kilda properties are always priced by the proximity to the beach, to shopping, and the size of the balcony. That's really what people look for. Whether it's 2 bathrooms or three or 1, it's really not that important because there's demand for all types of properties. There's more demand than supply in St Kilda in terms of these properties. Valuations. So we've got valuations there as well. We've got depreciation on the properties. by Washington Brown, so we know how much depreciation we can claim. So diminishing value on the on the 2 bedrooms, 17,500. This is for fixtures and fittings, 21,000, etc. Stamp duty calculations. There are two ways to calculate stamp duty. There's the short way and there's the long way. The short way is to take 60% and 40% of the value of the property and then multiply it by, just say the land component's around 40%, and then just calculate the stamp duty on the price. The long way, which costs around $3,000, which is what this developer did, is to get a surveyor and to measure the floor space on every apartment and work out the percentage of the floor space versus the land component of the actual footprint of the building and divide them accordingly. This way is more expensive. I always ask for it, but it ends up saving you a lot of money on stamp duty. Have a look at the stamp duty payable on these properties in terms of buying a brand new property. Stamp duty on some of these apartments is $3-4 grand in Melbourne, because you're only paying stamp duty on the land component and not the build component. And he did it the long way to save money for our investors. So just to give you an idea, if you were buying an apartment, for example, some of the ones, the penthouses, they're worth $700,000, your stamp duty is $6,662. If it was the full amount, it will be $37,000. Okay, so if you're paying stamp duty of $3 grand for an apartment in St Kilda, you're saving a lot of money, because normally if it was just done the fast way, it'll be around $7-8 grand for an off-the-plan apartment. So he's gone out of his way to do it the long way, which many developers don't do, and most investors are not aware of it. That's instantly a saving of $3-4 grand on the stamp duty calculation. I always ask for that when I deal with developers. Most people are not aware that that's an option. Okay, so let me just show you how the property investor analysis software works, because this is really what you need to do every time you do cash flow analysis. So we're going to create a new profile, and we're going to do the park. Okay, so we're going to buy one of the apartments in St Kilda, and I want to use someone as a guinea pig just to get you know what, I'll do a fictional person. Tomorrow we can use a few people as guinea pigs in terms of cash flow. So I want to do different income bands to show you what the implications are. So we're going to pick one of the properties. So I'm going to go and pick one of the properties that is existing. So we're going to go for, actually let's go for this one here, G5, which is $550,000. So the one we're aiming for here is ground floor. Okay, which is a 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony with a large open plan area. Access over here, good size balcony, 11 square meters balcony, which is really good size. So in this particular example, this property here is $550 and we're getting rental of around $480 a week. We always quote a range, but it's always the highest amount. So we're doing 18, so we're doing G5. By the way, can someone time me as well? So who's got a stopwatch here? And so let me show you what cash flow analysis really is. And this is what you need to do every time you look at a property. Without this tool, without this process, it's virtually impossible to look at property. Stop now? Yeah. St Kilda. And it'll probably take 5 minutes. 2-bedroom, apartment, and then you've got 16 months off the plan. Okay, we're doing 550. Now in terms of, the only thing we need to override here is stamp duty calculations. The purchase cost normally would be $28,770 if it was existing. So if we go to our stamp duty calculations and we work out what the discounted amount is, how much is it? 4215. Conveyancing, just leave $2,000. Okay, this software links to the State Revenue Office. Every major capital city has a completely different way of working out stamp duty, by the way. So we'll put that in. And rental income is $480 a week, which is 4.45%. And we're going to allow 1% vacancy rates for this particular property. The rental expenses, agent's going to charge you 7.7 for property management. And owners corporation, we're going to put in $1,423.38.
What was that for?
Depreciation of the building, so it automatically just defaults to, I always do diminishing value rather than straight line. And then we've got to go to depreciation schedule, and we've got one of them, which is, you can see that the amounts they're based on, $550, $21,000 in diminishing value. So what we do is, this is pretty accurate the way it does it. So if you go to depreciation, you're kind of close, we just go finance, always use the full amount when you're doing the loan, because assume you're borrowing 100%, even if you're getting a deposit from somewhere, you're still paying interest on that deposit of you got opportunity cost. Loan type, interest only, and we're going to do 5.6%, which we can get. Loan costs, the only loan cost is establishment fee. Put that at 0 because that can be waived through funders. There's still a cost of $3,600, which you can write off in the first 5 years. The investors, okay, so we got okay. Phone number. Okay, and let's say we do 65 and 30 for now. We'll play around with that as well. It's not important for your PPR. Living expenses, $30,950 for a couple, $18,750 for a single, which is the bank default. You can do a complete budget here, but I'll just keep it nice and simple. And we're going to put under single name. You can do joint names as well as a percentage split, but we'll do single. And then we go to inflation, 4%, 3.25. And the only thing we do is rental income in St Kilda increases at 6%, so it's not linked to inflation. Capital growth history, 10%. And stop. Stop the clock.
Sorry.
4.5 minutes.
Have a look at the cash flow analysis now. So this property would cost this person $83 a week out of pocket. You can see that that's the $83 out of pocket and $58 and $59. So you've got the property there, $550. The best part is this is your cash flow scenario on this property. So this property has a loss for this year, becomes cash flow neutral in year 8 or 9, where it generates $1,200. Okay, so this is how much. So think about this. Property can be as easy as this. If you add up all these figures here, that's around what? 8 grand, 12, 16, 17. $17,000 to make $730,000. Is that a good investment? Because that's your equity position in year 9. And it's cash flow positive there onwards. That's the property value. Can you imagine the land component in year 20 when your property is worth 3.7 million, how much land tax you'd be paying if it wasn't purchased in a trust? That's your equity, that's your rental. So in year 10, you've got 41 grand worth of rental coming in. That's your total deductions, that's your pre-tax cash flow, tax credits, all your depreciation stops around about year 13, and then that's your tax situation there. Also, what this does, it's a very visual thing because if you go to the reports, I mean, you can do a lot of different reports using this software. But if you go to cash flow analysis, my favorite part of all this is this part here. In the first year, your tenant pays 63% of your outgoings. You pay 11%. Your taxman pays 25%. Look what happens in year 10. 4%. Eventually becomes cash flow positive. And the biggest thing is with regards to this property. So let's go back to this, and we're just going to go to what happens if the investor's on, say, 85,000. $89,000. So it doesn't really make any difference whether it's 75 or 80. What happens if we were to put in finance the loan type instead of interest only P&I? What would happen to the weekly repayments? 289,000, 200 bucks extra per week. Can you imagine? And this is the thing.
Another 3 properties you could buy.
If you look at your cash flow scenario, look how negative you are. For how many years?
20 years.
It's still not cash flow positive after 20 years. That's why doing P&I is just insanely stupid in terms of structuring. Interest only, you're cash flow positive in year 9. This software is amazing because it gives you calculators. You can also do things like, let's say for example, you can do living expenses. Let's say I want to add something and I've got an e-tag, and because I drive around Melbourne all week, and I spent per month about 110 on e-tag. There it is there. If you want to report, there's your budget. Who likes that software? Isn't it amazing? Without it, how can you even do property investing? It's virtually impossible. So the thing is, even though we'll see a lot of properties tomorrow, my thing about these properties is, and we're going to go through all the due diligence in the morning. In the morning, actually come to this room first, because I'm going to go through all this due diligence tomorrow and explain negative gearing and cash flow to you. There is no one best property that we're going to see tomorrow. There is one best property for you individually in the room, but there isn't one best property that we'll see. Because everyone here has a different income, in different amounts of tax. So you have to make sure that the property that you buy, you might choose 3 or 4 properties, get together with your consultant, get him to do this cash flow scenario based on properties, and then decide which property will cost you virtually nothing out of pocket per week. The goal really is tomorrow, depending on your income, look, they're all good properties because I don't source anything unless I would invest there myself. In fact, we'll see projects that I've invested in myself. I've bought 2 in Martin Street, 1 in Bentley. The thing about it is tomorrow when we go through, your objective is to buy a property where if you're spending around 50 bucks out of pocket per week, that's pretty much the goal for most investors. I would say if you can't afford 50 bucks a week, maybe property's not for you. Do you know what I mean? Like 2.5 grand per year on a diminishing scale is pretty much what you should be looking for per property. And that will be determined mainly by how much tax you're paying and how much income you're getting from your job. You know, if you've got high income, yes, spend more, spend 100 bucks a week, 5 grand. And you can capitalize this. It doesn't need to come out of your income, your job income. You can be from anywhere. So if you look at Madison Gardens, for example, which we'll have a look at tomorrow, those townhouses, their actual rental yield is around 5%. So it's virtually for most people on 30 grand, they cost nothing out of pocket for those townhouses, you know? So it's really about getting together and finding out what is the best opportunity for me based on my specific case scenario. Everything we do in terms of the due diligence and research, if I just go back to, we purely base it on all these variables and it takes five minutes to do them. This is really it looks pretty basic, right? It looks, I mean, it's not aesthetically pleasing, this software, but it was made 20 years ago, and I can tell you now there is nothing that matches up. And I've got all the other software versions, including the online ones, and this is the most superior software you can use. I've only shown you a glimpse of what it can do. You can do multiple cash flow scenarios, you can work out your DSR ratios on this, everything pretty much. It's just amazing. Who's excited? Yeah? So tomorrow we're going to go and have a look at these projects. The other thing is with Madison Gardens, for example, I'll just take you through this. So you're going to get a physical version of all this due diligence. With this property project here, with these townhouses, which have a really good land component, they've got a double garage, a courtyard, 3 bedrooms. So they've got a master bedroom, 2 bedrooms upstairs, open plan downstairs. These properties here are actually nearly cash flow positive because they're returning around 5% rental yields, which is incredible for this market in Melbourne. When you consider that $340,000, 5%, some people actually end up with these cash flow positive just purely because their income drops into a lower marginal tax bracket. Some spend $15 a week, $20 a week. So it depends on how much income you do. Tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll go through due diligence in the morning. I'll do a bit of a concept to explain all the negative gearing to you and how it works in terms of depreciation. I don't want to do too much today because people are getting headaches already, right? And then we're going to go through all the different scenarios when we come back in terms of cash flow analysis. Did you guys enjoy today?
Yes.
That's pretty much it. Congratulations for making it through. Put your hands together for yourself. Tomorrow is going to be very exciting. 9 o'clock downstairs. We're going to leave. 9 o'clock in here, and we'll probably leave. The bus will leave around 9:30. I just want to spend half an hour going through all the projects. All the due diligence kits will be waiting for you on these chairs, and I'm going to go through them very quickly. And then all day we're going to spend literally on research and due diligence. No finance, no terminology, just purely looking at suburbs, looking at the market. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have plenty of rest. Thank you.